Soldier of Fortune Payback is the worst game I've ever played. You know how many times I've heard that statement? Way too many to count. But is it really that bad? Is it possible that this game could ever rank on my worst games I've ever played list, along with the likes of Hour of Victory, Kabuki Warriors, Ninja Bread Man, and Operation Raccoon City? I already know this game is bad because I remember playing it back in 2009, and all I could remember is that I hated it. But hate and it being the worst game I've ever played are two totally different things. When I put this game into my PlayStation 3 for this review, I noticed the developer, Cauldron Ltd. Big red flag there. I know of Cauldron from previous games I've either reviewed or played, such as Jurassic the Hunted, Secret Service, and those painfully bad History Channel first-person shooters. Based off the developer alone, I had a preconceived notion that this game was going to be just as bad, if not worse, than those other games. That's not the only major red flag, however. The game was published by not Activision, but Activision Value. Why is this a big deal? Well, for one, Activision Value doesn't exactly have an astounding track record of producing anything of value. Pun not intended. But the thing that scares me the most is that Activision Value was the initial publisher behind the infamously awful broken mess of a game called Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. A game that achieved a Metacritic score of 8%. That almost takes effort to get such an abysmal score. You know, before I started this, I guess I got kind of caught off guard because the original two Soldier of Fortune games were developed by another company, Raven Software, well known for their work with X-Men Legends, Jedi Knight Academy 1 and 2, Quake 4, and the many Call of Duty installments. Soldier of Fortune Payback came out in 2007, which was around the beginning of when competitive multiplayer first-person shooters started to break out into mainstream popularity. So, if you were to ask me about the story of this game, I'd openly and willingly tell you, I have no fucking clue what this game is about. 50% of that being because it's entirely forgettable, and the other 50% is because not only is the acting in this game outright terrible, but the way the story is told, like with the cutscenes and the dialogue, it's really piss poor. For example, there's times where you'll have a cutscene that leads into a boss fight. Well, the cutscene usually abruptly ends out of nowhere, and the enemy is in a totally different location than he was during the cutscene. It's ridiculous. Even more ridiculous when you realize the acting in this game is so bad, yet it has a cast of people that are good actors, like in the case of Kyle Hebert, who voices characters from Dragon Ball Z, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, The Witch and the 100 Knight, and many, many others. So, what's the deal here? Did everyone just phone it in because they either weren't getting paid well, or perhaps they knew this game was going to be shit and wanted an easy paycheck? I don't know, but would it surprise me? Hell no.
Quan Li, he's over here. What the fuck are you doing? You were supposed to protect him. No, you. What are you? Can't you guess? We're paid soldiers. I just got paid more to switch teams. Son of a bitch. You knew the risk, shithead. I just wish I could feel bad for killing you.
When you look at this game and analyze the graphics for a second and compare it to other games that came out back in '07, like Graw 2, Medal of Honor Airborne, Skate, the original Uncharted, and a game that I guess you could say directly competed with this, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Payback's graphics are woefully mediocre in comparison. To be fair though, this is a budget game, but even then, that's no real excuse for the other issues that plague Soldier of Fortune Payback, like frame drops to random slowdown speeds, and the hilarious glitches that are impossible not to come across during a playthrough. We'll get to that later on though. The gameplay, what do you want me to say? Honestly, you guys can see how bad this game is from the last however many minutes this video's gone on for. The gameplay sucks. The combat is boring. It's tedious. It's lackluster. I've said this before about a few other games I've reviewed, but it plays like any other humdrum mediocre shooter out there on the market during this time of 2006 to maybe 2010. The enemy AI are either stupid strong and can take you down in seconds, or they are so dumb that they go out of their way to try to melee you from like 50 feet, despite the fact they're carrying a loaded fucking weapon. What's the point? The AI programming makes no sense, but is it the worst AI I've ever seen? Oh, absolutely not. Deadfall Adventures, if I recall correctly, takes the cake on piss poor AI, at least with FPS games. The control is sluggish, making the combat even that much more unpleasant. They have that aiming mechanic I violently hate that games were putting out a lot during this time, where you would turn the right analog to look around, and it goes from being slow to full speed in less than a second. Thankfully, the aim assist helps to compensate for the bad aiming mechanics, but still, this was such a popular thing back then, and I couldn't understand why. I remember 10 years ago, I was having a similar conversation about this silly movement mechanic thing with a friend of mine, and he argued that the reason developers do this is because it makes it much more realistic. He and I no longer talk. Now, hang on a second. I believe I just noticed something here. Yeah, I did. So, the shotgun in this game is the same exact one that is used in Jurassic the Hunted, a game that was released 2 years after Payback, even going as far as to say they copied the same gun sounds and even the reload animation. I also noticed this game shares sound effects from other Cauldron games that were released after Soldier of Fortune Payback, like the Pistol in Secret Service or the BAR and M1 Grant in Battle for the Pacific. Those gun sound effects are also in Payback for other guns. This isn't exactly a knock on Payback, it's a knock on the developer point blank copy-pasting from one game to the next. And while I'm on the same subject, you know how in modern first-person shooters you aim down the sights. So in Payback, you don't aim down the sights. Instead, you just kind of point your gun at whatever you intend to shoot at. I mean, you can see your gun sights plain as day, but you're not looking through them. That is unless you put a red dot or scope on your gun. Then you actually use the sights. What's that about? Also, why did Cauldron decide to then copy that same aiming design and paste it on Battle for the Pacific? Maybe I'm being nitpicky, but am I alone in thinking that this design is ugly and kinda silly looking? The level design is, horrendous. Payback is very much so a linear corridor shooter, but in like the worst possible way. Very, and I mean very few open area engagements with enemies. Very little variety both with the level design and the mission objectives during the levels. This is one of those games where people describe, well, you know, if you played 1 or 2 levels, you've played the whole game. Normally, I disagree with statements like that, but in the case of Soldier of Fortune Payback, you know what? They're right. All the levels play nearly identical from each other. I was able to complete this game in just under 2 hours, and it felt like 30 hours. I mean, seriously, guys, this game was so painful to play simply because of how boring and lackluster it was. The sad thing here is that the only real enjoyment I got out of playing this game was from all the glitches thanks to the LMG and the explosives. Don't know what I'm talking about? Well, about a quarter of the way through the game, you unlock 2 guns in specific. There's an assault rifle and this LMG. For whatever reason, they programmed these guns to have the ability to launch and dismember enemies in spectacular fashion, which includes hilarious ragdoll physics in most cases. The best part is that these 2 guns cause enemy bodies and limbs to glitch and spaz out at any given moment. Body parts get stuck onto walls and random objects, and this happens. I've never seen anything like it before, and it's glorious. I'll be straight up with you. The glitches were the only real enjoyment I was having while playing this stupid mess of a game. Well, that and a few shots of bourbon that I was throwing back from time to time, but that's not the point. If it wasn't for the glitches caused by these 2 guns and all the explosions, I probably wouldn't even finish this game, even if it was only a 2-hour playthrough.
Good looking. I show you good time.
No, really, I got an appointment to keep.
Plenty of time for appointment later, mister. You relax now. I dance sexy for you.
Sorry, sweetheart, but this isn't gonna work out. I'm in a hurry and I'm far too sober for this. I need to see Elena Petrova. You know her?
What's this? You know like fun, mister?
Elena, goddammit, where is she?
Fine. Elena is upstairs. It is area.
The only people I would even recommend this to is those of us who intentionally love to play terrible games, for whatever reason we may have. Only because there's a lot you can laugh about with this one, but other than that, stay far away. Soldier of Fortune Payback and Cauldron destroyed what was left of this Soldier of Fortune series, and I highly doubt we'll ever see another game from them in the future. Unless some big budget developer and publisher takes the series and does their own thing with it, but even then there's such a little to no chance that that would ever happen in the future. See, the thing is, I see so many people bashing this game, saying it's the worst shooter they've ever played, or going as far as to say it's the worst game of all time. But is it though? If you really delve into the shithole shooter fest that is the PS3, Wii, and Xbox 360 generation of consoles, while Payback is, yes, a terrible game, there's no way in hell I could ever justify this on being on my worst shooter game list. Unlike some of the other games that are on that list, Payback isn't broken. It's not technically unplayable. It's simply put a terrible game with zero substance to it. Hell, even Cauldron's other game, Battle for the Pacific, is significantly worse than Soldier of Fortune Payback. That one is broken in certain parts, and that one has way more fundamental problems to it. So I dare all of you to check that game out before saying Payback is the worst first-person shooter game. Believe me, there are far worse games out there than Soldier of Fortune Payback. Like, Mindjack. Oh, I get chills every single time that game is mentioned. And no, I'm not playing that.